All right, welcome to the Bojangles Studio. It's Kelley Earnhardt Miller here with you for another episode of Business of Motorsports. And today we've got a great segment with Jeff Dickerson. And our guest segment, as always, is brought to you by our great friends at Ally. And so Jeff Dickerson, I'm super excited to talk to Jeff. A lot of cool insight about the charters, which is a really hot topic right now. So I'm excited to talk about that. A growing empire at Spire Motorsports. Been in the sport for quite some time, and a lot of great opportunities that have taken place for you over the last several months, and a pretty new announcement too for 2025. So we've got lots to talk about. So Jeff, welcome to the Business of Motorsports.
Thank you, Kelley. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. So I feel like, a lot of our listeners will know the name Jeff Dickerson, but let's talk about how you got into NASCAR. It was pretty early age, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was an IndyCar spotter, and I was working for Kerry Agajanian over at MMI, and, they had that 43 Busch car. Remember the Johnny Sauter and everybody ran through there?
Yep.
And so I would spot some of the off weekends of IndyCar on that 43. And Mike Beam at PPI needed a spotter at Dover or Talladega for Ricky Craven, it was California. And they were just it was like sight unseen. They were like, hey, will you come out here? And that was essentially that, right? I did that. It was I got here through spotting, right?
And how many years ago was that?
This is in 2004, maybe 2003, 2004.
Okay.
And everything happened for me really, really quick. So I was at PPI doing Craven. He got hurt. Bobby Jr. was in there, and Mr. Hendrick and those guys, they were building that 5 team, a bunch of young guys, right? And so it was the Charlotte test. Alan kind of saw me in the garage, and he said, hey, we might be looking to make a change. And you could say that conversation changed my life, right? Because that kind of put me in Mr. Hendrick's orbit, and he hasn't been able to get rid of me really since.
There's nothing like being in Mr. Hendrick's orbit.
No, for sure. And so
he's a people person.
Oh, the best. And so and again, the agency business kept growing. I was still working at MMI. I got to work with a lot of different guys, and that was kind of my, welcome in, or, that's how I got in. Yeah.
So did you end up going to spot for the 5 car at that point?
I did.
You did. Okay.
You did.
And you were working with Motorsports Management International there. And so that leads me to something interesting, which I really didn't realize. I think of you now, with Spire and all of those things, and I love to reflect on going back, but you were involved in with Kyle Busch and going to Joe Gibbs Racing. So talk a little bit about that.
Man, it was it was just a crazy time, right? And I was spotting for Kyle, but Kyle was not a client of mine.
Okay. But
we had developed a relationship, and again, I think a lot of spotters do develop a real close relationship with their driver, because they really are counting on you and they trust you. And we had heard whispers, at this point I'm just spotting, right? But it's we had heard whispers. It's man, are they going to bring him back? Are they not going to bring him back? What's going on? Dale was going
to be a free agent.
Yeah, it was free. And so it's really funny that we're in this studio, right, in this building, right? Because it's Kyle called me over at Dover.
So this must have been 2007-ish?
Yeah. June race of 2007. It was we were in a rain delay on a Friday or Saturday, and he called me over, and I just remember him being hey, I think some things are going to change here. I don't necessarily want to leave, right? I need you to, I need you to represent me, and I need you to kind of handle this. And so we raced on a Monday, if I remember right. And I remember being in Marshall's office on a Tuesday, and essentially begging them not to, not to let Kyle go.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had this meeting with Mr. Hendrick, and it was the insight he gave me. You could tell it was kind of a tough decision for him, but he was just I will help you guys, in any way. And it's all been documented now. It's just he kind of redid Kyle's deal. It's just like, hey, let's make it through the year. Like, he always made it like great. So the day you guys announced, and it may have been here, right?
We did do them both here.
Yeah, when you guys and so our MMI office was right there, and so when you guys announced it is when we started our spree, right? And that's when we were trying to wait for your media stuff to die down a little bit so we could sneak in.
It was a really big deal.
Yeah, and then before we could even make a call, the phone was ringing, right? Or our phone was ringing, and it at least. Looking back, and I think Kyle would say the same thing. It's like it might not have been where he wanted to be, but at that point, right? I mean, obviously, he had great success at JGR,
absolutely.
But he was going to be okay, and so and obviously he connected really well with JGR, and rest was history.
And did you go to spot for him there?
Yeah,
okay.
I did. I did.
So you went to spot for there.
I did.
And so transition me from MMI and to Spire Motorsports and how that kind of become what it is.
Yeah, so
you've been the little team that could for a while now.
Yeah, it's a source of pride. Like, we kind of, it feels like these opportunities choose us as much as we choose them. Like, I think we've talked about it a little bit. It's like, Spire Motorsports at the start was kind of like by accident, right? Like we were trying to sell the charter, for Barney and those guys. And there were a couple of people, you look back at it now, it's just like, man, if they would have bought it, where would we be? Because we wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
We would have been really happy for the commission in those days, right? But it all started with Barney had come over to, or Joe Garone had come over to, Ty was working for us and TJ at Vegas and said, why don't you guys do it?
So you're talking about the Denver Mattress team. Help me with the owner's name.
Barney Visser.
Barney,
yeah.
Yes, Barney. So
fresh off a championship.
I know that from Regan Smith days, and then Truex is there and fresh off a championship, and you're working with him to move his charters. And This is in the infancy of charters. What?
This is
how many years? 2, 3, 4?
Yeah,
two,
the third
three?
or fourth year.
Yeah.
And so, because we were doing the sponsor deals.
Yes.
Like, for everything that was on there and the 77 team, we had brought.
Right.
And so he had said, hey, why don't you guys look at doing this? And, our building was, our office was on top of that Equate Bank building. And I think they always came up just because we were kind of like a frat house meta law firm kind of in a way, And like they'd come up and they're just like, what are you guys so quiet about? Like, what's going on? Because it was never quiet. And it was a general manager guy. And we were like, well, we got this opportunity. How do we kind of pull it together? Like we don't have the money for this. And they were like, give us a minute. And like in 15 minutes, like no joke. And again, this is why we're just like the luckiest people. We had the president of the bank, the VP of the bank. I mean, we had like the loan credit
all the stars aligned.
Everybody there. And so we, that whole deal came together in 3 days. And so that kind of, we went 1 week, we were just in the agency business, and 7 days later, we somehow had a team.
So am I hearing you right that in that time when you're trying to buy the charter, you essentially use the charter as collateral at the bank?
Yeah. Yep.
Which I just think is an important thing to note because of all the discussion that's going on now. That really is what helped. I mean, it helped teams, right, to be able to have an asset that you can borrow against if you need to, but it's an asset. It's a real asset.
No, for sure. I mean, look, remember we had to put up a lot more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't as quantifiable in those days either.
Yes.
But I give Ty a ton of credit on this because it's like we had to come up with a business model in about 36 hours, and he nailed it. Right? I mean, they just
had good
nailed
experience. Ty Norris, who ran Dillon Incorporated for quite some time. So,
that's right. Right. And yeah, I mean, it's just like you asked that, and it's like, man, it could have gone a different way, like so many different.
Yeah, It's funny to me because people ask for Junior Motorsports, well, what was your and Dale's vision? And this sounds similar. I mean, you didn't really have a plan. The plan kind of fell in your lap. Same thing for us when we started this Xfinity team. We thought, a year out we would get into the Busch Series at the time, the Nationwide Series, and the sponsor landed in our lap 3 months before the year before we were going to. And it's like, you have to make a decision. I mean, you have to make a decision on what makes sense for you. And as scary as it was, you didn't know where the money was going to come from or how you were going to make it happen. It's like, you can't not take advantage of the opportunity.
That's
and like
right.
you said, it would be so different.
Yeah.
Right?
And it just kind of chose us. And like, and it's funny, like even when you talk about the background, like you have kids, right? And everybody says it's like, you don't remember anything before, like as soon as you have kids, you forget what it was like to be like before you had kids. It's almost the same thing here with this race team. Like, when we talk about it, like you remember the MMI days in Spire when it was, just getting going, Steve Phelps, in our first meeting with NASCAR, when they were just like, are you guys crazy? Like, what are you guys doing? Right. It was Steve and Steve at the hauler at Charlotte. And that same year, like 18, I guess it was. And the truest words he ever said, he goes, you guys have been in a lot of deals. You guys have done a lot that nobody ever knows. You will now only be known for how you do on Sundays.
Yeah.
Right. So like
once
if you
become the race team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you don't do what you say, everybody's gonna know. If you don't run well, it was just like truer words were never spoke, because now we don't even really remember what it was like.
Right. So talk about that a little bit if you can.
Yeah.
It was unbeknownst to me that really you and your organization, from a management standpoint, have been involved in a lot of charter deals that have taken place up until a few years ago, which now we've, been setting with nothing until recently. There you go again. And we're going to talk about that. But talk about that. Talk about Spire Management. I mean, you're involved in a lot of other things outside of NASCAR. You represent other companies and are involved in other sports. Yeah,
we've been taking sponsors to race teams for, not even ours, right? For years. We've put the management business, the driver management business, kind of like behind a firewall. So they're now in the old MMI building and just kind of rocking. And we have these 3 hockey teams now, in the ECHL, which again, it's just almost like the charter. They just kind of choose you. It wasn't like we woke up one day and said, "Hey, this would be a good idea." Yeah. But you see the opportunity, you're like, "Man, this might be something we gotta do." But yeah, we've got our hands in a lot of different places, and sometimes that's chaos, right? But I gotta tell you, the certainly here, like the last 6 months, I feel like I've just been like race team. It's like I feel like a guilty parent, because it's like I feel like I'm not paying attention as much as I want to like the hockey stuff or really anything, because it feels like once you kind of transition into like we're like trying, like you might not know this, we're trying to win now. and
there you are.
Yeah. So, like everything that kind of goes into it, and now we got real sponsorship, and it's just like, you just can't take your eye off that ball.
Yeah. The priorities have really reset for you. Right. So, what little I know about your business, I mean, you've always had like an A car and a B car, so to speak, in the recent years, with one that you've been able to invest a lot of resources into and really try to put that car up front, and maybe one where, you haven't been as fortunate with sponsorship or whatnot, and you just can't look at them the same, right? But now you're in a situation with this most recent acquisition and charter acquisition and relationship with Gamebridge, that it's a game changer.
Yeah.
And like they said, you have to perform. Everybody's looking at what you're going to do on Sundays now.
Yeah, and look, that's the thing that kind of sucked about last year, right? Is like the cars were the same last year. It just looked like they were.
Didn't look like they were.
And that's where it's just like, you'll probably hear me say it a couple of times. You're like, expectations are a funny thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we had never thought about, hey, making changes, or hey, we gotta, maybe look, it was the first time we had like moved a crew chief during the year. It's just like, those are real difficult, decisions. Mm-hmm. But right now we're full blown. Everything's the same. The only thing holding us back is ourselves.
Yeah.
know?
So I want to go back for a second to talk about charters. I mean, you've seen the charters trade, in the single digit numbers and up until probably one of the Trackhouse charters, has been said in the low teens, number. And at one point I read that you said $6 million for a charter. Whew, wow. How are we going to make this work? Mm-hmm. The word is on the street, the most recent charter, traded at $40 million. That's quite whether it was 20 million or 30 million or 40 million, it's quite a difference from 6 million. How do you what does that feel like? You thought 6 million was a risk. What does it look like now?
Yeah. I mean, you look like you're crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you look like you're crazy, but it's like you have to kind of insert yourself into that, right? Like, we knew on Barney's charter, we knew it was beachfront property, and because we had already made the sales pitch. We had made the sales pitch to everybody, right? So it became a thing where it's just like, do you believe what you're selling or not, right? And so we didn't. It was Ty that came up with the model, right? But it was like, we knew it was like really, really great. The gosh, I'm a disciple of Mr. Hendrick, right? It's just like, again, the risk model for us is more just like, if you don't have anything, it's a different equation. You know what I mean? Like, you can't go double broke, right? So when it's 35, 40, and wherever it's going, it's like, now it's really about supply and demand, right? I think there's two factors that go into the charter kind of like value game right now, and that's supply and demand, and when and whether we get a deal done, right?
Yeah.
And so those are the things that are kind of like fluctuating the market, and right now there's depending who you want to talk to or whatever, there's 2, 4, 6 on the market right now, and so obviously that's going to kind of depress it just a little bit, but it'll fluctuate right back up as soon as we get a deal done with NASCAR.
Yeah. So what as a team owner and an owner of charters, and possibly wanting to maybe expand, what are you looking at from a team owner's perspective to make the value of your charter as best it can be?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess it's like, well, hold on. I think we're cool not expanding anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
right now I think
we're good. Yeah, I think we're good. I think we're having all the fun we can stand. It's really the deal. For us, it's really just the deal with NASCAR and how that shakes out when it's said and done. What we've been encouraged about in our discussions with NASCAR is just like, enterprise value is a word that they use too, right? For the charters and for us. So, you just kind of like control what you can control. And
what's your perspective been on a charter being permanent or not? Because obviously you've invested in the charters as they have sat over this last 7-year agreement, and again, word on the street, and not just meaning you in particular. But just your overall thought process of what does that change if they're permanent and or not permanent? Because we've been operating under a system where they're not permanent,
right? I'll preface my answer by saying it's just like, I don't think NASCAR wants to take them away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, just kind of like using
that would be
in
pretty
the
hard. I feel like. Yeah. I think the same. I've thought about that too. It's like, it would be a huge deal.
Well,
like, yeah.
My demeanor would be totally different.
Yeah. How do you look at a race team that's owned by Michael Jordan and say, hey, you put X many million down in this, and now we're just going to do away with them.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to take them away, but it's just like the thing is like, they should be permanent.
Yeah.
They should.
It operates like another sport and another franchise, right?
Yeah, and we can get because that's kind of like something that we're always thinking about and talking about. But it's like, what permanent charters would do for the owners is, I think, and we've done it without the permanent charters. Is just like, I think you would find more owners taking risks like us on investing into their business, right? I also think, and this is I don't think anybody's really saying this, but it's something I believe. I think it brings back like owners investing in younger drivers. You know what I mean? Like, because if it's permanent, now it's also easier to go to outside investors, right? It's easier to, there's a whole market right now of people trying to get into sports, and obviously, because of the deals we've done in the past, it's just like, we're always getting calls, whether it's to represent them or as, hey, what's going on? And I just think it's like, it's the guys that missed out on MLS, right? Or they just want something in sports. And for, we can argue that it shouldn't be as easy to get in at these numbers, right? But it's just like, they know that for, 45, 50 million, they can essentially go buy a team, right? And that's a lot of money, except when they're looking at $1 billion to get in over someplace else, right?
Yeah.
And so look, and we're a major league team or major league, like we're in the American sports landscape, and that's where I get kind of like, because of our hockey stuff and the opportunities that come our way. It's like a National Women's Soccer League team trades for about $50 million right now.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's when you look at that, and then you look at our, reach and the money that's in here and the sponsors that are in here and our TV package. It's like we haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg on what these charters should be worth. And furthermore, just take the charters away for a second, about what this whole industry, could be worth.
Yeah, the value.
Right? And so that's why it's just like, I think that permanent thing has kind of become like a real, buzzword and all that. And we should have them permanent.
Yeah.
Because it would, it wouldn't just...
We'll just solidify and stabilize a lot of question and unknown.
That's
right.
The downstream
it's
effects
operating as if it is, right? You've operated that way for over the last contract that the teams have had with NASCAR on the charter. So yeah. So now this is my perspective, as we've and I've had in-depth conversations with you about charters and what things look like over the years. From my perspective, from mine and Dale's perspective, and something that you just spoke to, it's one thing to have an asset like the charter and have a value for your company, right? That you've got something tangible that's worth something, because there's so much goes into a race team of the sport. But the problem that I keep stumbling over when I'm looking at the risk that I'm willing to take, and granted, Dale and I are at a different place in our life in terms of, I feel like we've lived a life of 25 years doing what we've done, right? Seriously. So do we want to invest another 25 years being 50 years old? What do we want to do, right? But the thing that I stumble over is just kind of the whole model, right? Sponsorship, I know in the Xfinity Series is really tough. It doesn't seem as tough in Cup, but it's still really tough.
Yeah.
I mean,
tough
but you are seeing sponsorships out there. I mean, I feel like, you look at Trackhouse, they've done a great job of putting sponsors on their car as a new team. And so that's kind of where I get hung up, is like that business model to, if you really want to be in the sport for the long haul, as an Earnhardt would, the value of the charter is one thing, but it doesn't make what the day-to-day operations, go around.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
And so I really feel like that's kind of the stumbling block for us, is like, how do you make all that make sense? Do you think about that? Do you have worries about that? What's your thought on that? And it's very different from our Xfinity position than your Cup position.
Yeah, but like, here's the thing, like tying like your previous question into, kind of like this answer.
Yeah.
In a permanent or really hard to lose charter model, going forward, in the Earnhardt name, and with, these investment groups that are trying to get in, I mean, I would kill to take you guys up to New York and say, hey, Dale Jr. and Kelley,
have at it.
You know what I mean? Like that makes it, but in those kind of discussions, that's the kind of the issue. It's hard to look these guys that are trying to get into other sports and be like, well, yeah, but it's not quite permanent. It's not this, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of, it becomes more of a trust instead of just like, hey, it's on paper. The time stuff you just can't get past, right? I mean, you can't get around it. It's just crazy. Like we talked about, it's just like, my focus has now become on this. And that is with like Doug Ducart running the place.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's not like we have like, a bunch of kids over there just running, playing race team. It's like we got a legit.
Great hire there, by the way.
Yeah.
Doug's a stand-up guy and smart. And
he's the best. And it still just takes everything. Like I always like go to Mr. Hendrick. It's just like, how do you run all these dealerships and this? Like I feel like I'm not doing something right, but it's, look, I mean, you guys could do it. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's just in your blood.
I don't have any doubt that we could do it. It's just like, what keeps you up at night and trying to do it, And I think that's where it's like, how much energy do you want to expend in that part of it? Because, it is, our whole marketing landscape just within the world has changed with the introduction of social and digital and that's so much less expensive to play in that world than our traditional, what we as a sport competed against traditional print TV media type advertising budgets, right? So if Dawn Dish Soap wanted to, spend X dollars on TV running commercials, or do they want, a hauler and a race car going around in circles and up and down the road? And what was that value? Now the values are so different,
right.
With social and digital into the world. So, we're seeing less of the kind of spends that we've seen in the past. So that's just the only part that kind of worries me, is like that business model, which I know that's another thing that from a charter perspective and an owner's perspective that you guys are lobbying for is to make, the P&L
look better.
Look better.
Yeah,
right?
and they're and like, I think again, some of these things get lost in all the noise, right? It's just like what NASCAR is talking about doing is getting. It's not like they're sitting there being like, we're not giving you guys more money.
Right.
They are giving us more money. And so, I think they hear that, and that as it pertains, to hypothetical, JRM Cup Series program, it's like, if the money jumps up, right, that is less money that you have to spend. Or less money you have to get, from sponsorship.
Yeah.
This cost cap thing is floating around, so you look at, revenues going higher, if a cost cap, gets phased in, and sponsorship, it's like, you wouldn't.
What is your perspective on spending cap in that discussion?
I could go either way, on it.
What's advantages and disadvantages?
The disadvantage for us would be, it would be so funny that we finally hit our ass on sponsorship,
and then you
get
spend.
limited. Yeah, and then you get limited. I think what it does is it's like, as you talk about other sports leagues and so forth, it's like salary cap. Everybody knows about it. Everybody plays around it. It's just incorporated in. I do think it jumps up your enterprise value. If we had a cost cap and guaranteed revenues from NASCAR. Again, just in business, if your expenses in some ways are fixed and your money's guaranteed, it's like, you're probably going up in enterprise value. So, I don't want to say it on both sides. It's like, I would be generally for it. I'm certainly open to it, and I think it would tighten up the garage a little bit, as far as spending. But again, that some of that wouldn't include, your drivers, and you wouldn't include like your front office, and as you do too, right? It's just like, it's funny how, in every series we compete off the track as much as we do on the track.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that's, if we can still compete there, like we really enjoy competing in that place too. So it's like, whatever they decide is cool. But, if you ask me right now what I would do, I'd be like, yeah, I'd vote for it. I'd be cool with it.
What I don't know if you can answer this question, but I'm going to ask anyway. What is, I guess maybe just by percentage wise, are the teams in a unified stance for the most part, or is it like 70 are for XYZ and 30 are not, or what's the lay of the land as you go into these negotiations?
So the teams are unified on 4 points.
Okay. So the 4 points we've been seeing in the news.
Right. and that is not like, that is 100%. These are the 4 points for the 16 chartered teams. It's the tactics, I think, where everybody's not unified.
Yeah. Okay. Great point. Right.
It's not
how
policy,
you go about getting there.
How you go about getting there.
Right.
And I think, like we talked about regular sports leagues, and hey, this is how they do it here, and this is how they do it here. And that's right. That's how it should be. That's not here.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's, that's kind of the, that's one of the challenges, is just like this, as much as we want it to be like every sports league, it's not.
Yeah.
Right. It's family owned, and that's just how it is. And this as much as I do. It's a privilege to be in this sandbox, and that's just how it goes. Right. We've all been called to the NASCAR hauler and know that this sport can go on without us. And that's true. I mean, actually. Right. So, that's kind of like it. It's just kind of.
It's just how you get there, more of the negotiation of what people are looking for and how they get there and whatnot.
And how they rank those 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really the interesting part, without, giving the game up, right? It's like, that's the interesting part. It's like, permanent charters are important for, for some it's their biggest issue, and for some it's their third or fourth biggest issue.
Yeah.
And, for guaranteed revenues, it's just like, some people would give up some of the guaranteed revenue to have permanent charters, right? Yeah. And it's like, I think we're all on the same page on governance, but we have that now, right? And I just mean, like, if they were changing something materially with the car, we have to work with the teams. But it's just how you get there.
I think that's one of the things that I've experienced in the Xfinity series is just in talking about, as the world turns and things change in the world, people, how they consume our sport, what they're willing to spend on our sport, how we go to market with our sport, how do we go to market with the sponsors. As all that changes, our sport hasn't been as quick to adapt with it, which I feel like has put us in this spot that we're in. You guys are in it on the Cup side where you're needing pretty significant, massive changes to better your position, to better the team's positions. Same thing on the Xfinity scene. It's like I want somebody just to give me the rules and tell me these are the rules I got to play by, and then I'll decide if I can do it. But it's not that easy. No. Because we all have such an investment in the past that would shatter some of us to go forward in the future, So, because I'm often just like, oh my gosh, I'm just so tired of these conversations. Like, what does this look like? What do we do here? And do we do this? Do we do that? It's like, just give me the rules and I can decide if I can play by the rules. But it's just not that simple because we all have such, we just, there's a lot of different types of investment, a lot of different risks that has been taken by different people. Yeah. We all have different advantages. I mean, Junior Motorsports' greatest advantage is Dale Jr., right? And the Earnhardt name. So what we can do and what works for us doesn't work for Johnny Davis's team or whatever it might be, So that's really the hard part. You've experienced that on your end?
Yeah, I mean, like, again, it's just different, right? Here, there's some advantages. Well, hold on. To your first point, what sucks is these are complex issues.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And, you and I could do this show for 7 hours. Like, you know what I mean? Like, seriously, just on how, because these are, like, it's hard to take.
Well, and that's kind of the point I want to make to our listeners. Like, it is complex.
Yeah.
And it's not simple just to say X, Y, Z. And as much noise is out there, running these businesses are very difficult.
Yeah. And they're family businesses,
Yes, and they're all, most of them are, right? Yeah.
So it's emotional, like it's emotional. It's an emotional issue because both sides in some ways that's their family business, right? Look, coming from the hockey side, for the perspective, there's been plenty of times in league meetings where I'm just like, what the hell is going on in here, right? Because it's a league, right? And so there's 30 of us trying to figure out the rules or trying to figure out this or figure out that, and I'm just like, where the hell's the France family? You know what I mean?
Just tell us what to do.
Because kind of like what you're saying. There's just like they would just tell us what the rules are. And over here, it's kind of funny. It's just like in some ways we're just like, just tell us what the rules are, and in other ways we're just like, let us tell you. Let us
tell you how we want to do this.
So, but again, because it's just again, it's so complex, and it's again who ranks what where. Because and that's the other part. When you talked about this changing landscape, the teams in NASCAR. At all series and all the national series, we should all be working together, right, to quote unquote grow the sport, right, and to promote our sport. And there's a way to do all this in a way that everybody wins. It doesn't matter if you're a truck team or a cup team. We all should be, trying to lock arms with NASCAR and do this together because it's the only, in my estimation anyway, I think it's the only way for us to cut across. It's going to take a coordinated.
It's the best opportunity by far.
For sure. It's going to have to be coordinated because, it's so funny to say it like this, right? It's just like we are competing with, some content creator on YouTube that's making, 12 million views or whatever. I mean, now you're going in and you're talking about NASCAR. And you're legit competing with like a 14-year-old, person that's like dancing, dancing like
goofy.
So you're, that's your new world, right? So it's like, how do we cut through that? And I think we all have to do it together, at least my opinion.
Yeah, and that involves a level of transparency, and I think that's been hard to achieve with everyone,
Well, you need everybody to be like, there has to be honor amongst thieves if you're going to be transparent, right? And that's the other part.
That's the hard part. Yeah, that's what I was going to say is like for years when it was all going well and when things go well, even in your own world, when things are going well, you don't need to tell anybody anything, and you don't need to work that much harder. But when it does get hard is when you need all hands on deck, right? And that's kind of where we've been these last few years. What have you seen? You talked about, just really the need to join hands with everybody. What have you seen over the last year? I feel like NASCAR has the Netflix show. There have been a lot of things that investments made for this sport for the betterment of it. Are you seeing some positiveness with that?
Yeah, and I guess yes, because everything moves the needle. Like certainly a Netflix show, moves the needle, and you see NASCAR and what they've invested, and the teams are investing too, right? And even if we're doing it for ourselves, quote unquote, we're still doing something for the sport, right?
Absolutely.
It's just maybe it's spending those dollars in the right places, you know what I mean? But it's like it's lost on. Sorry, I'm tilting out because about a million things are going through my head. I think that's one of those issues, right? It's like I don't know that sometimes NASCAR sees what the teams have done, and I don't think the teams sometimes see what NASCAR has done. And that's why it's like we can just remove that thing off the table, period, if we could just lock arms. Because what you just point out doesn't get pointed out enough, right? It's like right now because the charter stuff is so is making so much noise, it's like it almost blocks out the 99% of the time that we all cooperate with NASCAR, even through a charter negotiation that has gone off the rails a couple times, right? It's like we're still having them in the shop, we're still doing it's just kind of like this. It's weird, but it's like those success stories aren't making it through because of what's going on.
And between the teams, we still are having to be so competitive for sponsorship and people and all the things, right? I just saw, just speaking of what the teams are doing and the value add, Carson Hocever's digital content today.
Unbelievable.
It was
unbelievable.
So good. It was so funny.
So great.
And the whole part in there about Dale Jr., I mean, that really resonated with me. And I actually retweeted it and shared it. But, that's the kind of thing you're talking about. Like, we all lift each other up. The problem is, should I be retweeting Spire Motorsports' stuff? No, absolutely not. Do I want to help you grow your numbers? No, not really. But in a model where you knew that all 52 cards were up in the deck. What's that a good Joe Mattis saying, right? All 52 cards face up. We all understand how we fit in the ecosystem. We're all participating in the ecosystem from like you said, from grassroots up, right? To cup. And but there's still a lot of competition there, right? That it's hard to let go of because you're fighting for your business.
Well, one of my stupid ideas is because we're at this intersection as an industry and we're walking into the next charter agreement, but it could be at any level. Like in F1, there's like a contract board. You know what I mean? Like, where
I don't know a lot about F1.
Well, there's like all driver contracts, and like their terms
get looked at.
And your employees and all that. So you don't because I think that would lead to more transparency because you know how much it sucks here, and I've been in plenty of skirmishes and I just hate it because you're going to run into them at a dinner, right? Yeah. And that's the thing here is this like. We all live together. Our kids all play together. Yeah. We all do everything together. And
we're going to have to face each other.
We got to face each other. And we're, I just hate it because you're just like, man, you're just like taking each other's sponsors and you're taking each other's people and you're taking each other, like, Yeah, and you're trying to outbid the next person or whatever it is. Like it's really difficult. Yeah. I mean, and you don't do it. I mean, you sort of do it selfishly because you're trying to protect your own investment because you're not participating in the whole picture. That's right. I mean, you don't do it maliciously. Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I just think that board, if we could come up with some kind of thing on contracts and so forth, I think it would contribute to, like what you're saying, to have that kind of transparency because I'm not taking this from you, right? And this from there. I don't want to take something from you because you're going to kick my ass. But other teams, I would like to know, what's the rules of engagement before I get into a dark alley. You know what I mean? So
what do you see? What do you feel like the time frame is to get to an agreement? I mean, we have to get to an agreement by the end of this year, right? Yeah. Time's just ticking away.
I think we're close to. I mean, this is the question right now. When O'Donnell said, "Hey, we're close to a deal," right? And everybody's just like, "Are we?" And so, like, I'm of the mind, like, yeah, we're close.
Yeah.
Right. And what I've been saying to people is like, we're close whether we know it or not.
Yeah. There's a deadline. It's got to come. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I know NASCAR is going to start sending paper over.
Yeah. Nobody wants it to go the other way for sure, and nobody can afford for it to go. Nobody can afford for it not to get done. So from both sides.
No, for certain. Yeah. And the you didn't ask me this, but it kind of popped through my mind, and I've said it a couple of times, is it has to get done.
Yeah.
Right? It has to get done.
Yeah.
And it's not, you hear all the things like, it's like, are the teams not going to show up or something like that? I have contracts with sponsors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
you got to go somewhere.
Yeah. Like, my thing, we do have an agreement with NASCAR. Obviously, we all do. But your relationships with sponsors are so fragile, right? Mm-hmm. And so there is no way we are not going to the Daytona 500. You know what I mean? Like, there is no way we are not going to whatever the next race is or the next race is, because we've already signed those contracts, right? So, where we sit, it's just like we want to get the best deal, we can, right? And the teams have legitimate issues, but at the end of the day, our issue is not going to be them.
Right.
It would be sponsors if we didn't show up, right? And so that's kind of like we're and look, you could say, hey, so do they.
Yeah.
Right. So we're all kind of boxed in. So we just need to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point. What about other revenue streams? Do you, outside of what you're looking for under the charter agreement and kind of that guaranteed revenue, what other revenue streams do you maybe see on the horizon or feel like are out there for our sport or teams, cup teams?
I mean, gambling,
yeah,
parimutuel betting. I don't know.
The gambling thing's a big thing. I don't remember the exact statistic, but I was floored as soon as North Carolina opened up gambling. What was it? I think I heard it was like 3 weeks, and North Carolinians had bet like $600 million or something crazy. I'm like, where's all this money coming from?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, as you know, it's like, with our hard cards and everything, we like, I know.
Yeah, we can't do it.
I love a friendly wager. I mean, I love betting on sports. I do not bet on hockey. I do not bet on racing. I don't know, at Daytona this year, did you see like there was like a Bet MGM or some thing in the infield there?
Yes.
And I just thought that was a sting operation.
Get us to
You know what I mean? Like they were just like we just walked around.
See who we can get.
Yeah. But like the gambling thing is a big thing, and other sports leagues are working with them. But look. I'm blank on. That's just what's coming into my mind. It's like parimutuel
That's the
stuff.
first thing that comes to mind for me as well.
But it's like there's so many like the rights that the teams have, like with NASCAR. NASCAR's muscle. Because they're the league. We know we can generate new revenue, right? And I think the thing, for the teams is just like, okay, how much of that are we? How much is it fair?
Yeah, how are we going to participate? Right, exactly.
And I think NASCAR signal that they're willing to, work on that. And I think it's just, it's important, right? It's one of those four.
Yeah.
It's just, again, it's just like, how do we arrive at it?
It's funny.
Or how do we define it?
Yeah, it's funny. It just, that just made me think of, I think that our fans, and we just have incredible, great, loyal fans. But we talk about the complexity of this business and running the car store here for Dale and Kevin and Jeff and Justin. The girls that work on that account, they're used to our grassroots tracks, which are happy for us to be there. They're happy for people to come and be a vendor and do all this stuff. And so they've been working with North Wilkesboro with this upcoming Cars Tour in the All-Star race. And they've been coming across fees for different things, like fees for setting up the souvenir trailer, fees for a vendor to come in. And I'm like, yeah, that's how this works. And they're just floored, because they haven't had that experience yet. I point that out, just going back to the whole circle of how we can participate and how, because that's important. Those fees for a racetrack have been important. What they, when our sponsors go in to sample or set up and a fee is paid to the track or whatever, again, just going through that whole ecosystem of participation, because it gets disappointing when your sponsor can't activate. You know, they have the dollars to come into the sport, but then they can't take their program on the road with you.
That's right.
And do stuff, right? Not saying that the tracks don't need to make the money, because I know they do, but somehow we have to figure out how it works for everybody, because I have definitely seen, I've seen the sponsorship graveyard through the years, right?
Same.
Right. So
it's really got to be a combination of interests, right? You know, I mean, we always talk about conflict of interest. It's got to be a combination of interests, because when we go to those racetracks, it's like our
we need to sign combination of interest agreements instead of conflict of interest agreements.
No, seriously, because just like you're saying at the racetrack, it's like it's team sponsors that are buying those suites. It's team sponsors that are doing the hospitality. It's like we need to come up with something where they don't feel so taxed.
Yeah.
Because again, like I said, it's like these relationships are so fragile.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you just don't know when they're going to go crashing into the graveyard, right? And so, but it also just kind of, you're talking about that ecosystem. That's why it's just like we have to lock arms, right? It's like we are all participating in this, right?
We're all trying to get to the same thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
have the same success.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
We just need to.
So a couple things I want to touch on from the team perspective. What are you seeing with the new car? I know it's not the new car anymore, but how has that affected you for Spire Motorsports in terms of competition and competing against what we referred to as the big dogs?
Yeah, I mean, we have our moments.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, I thought Carson was a legitimate top 10 car, top 12 car, at Kansas. And we could say that. We know it's working because we can say that after of the however many races we've had. It feels like we've had really good cars, and we could be at like a top 15 car. And I know some people would be like, oh, top 15, Jesus Christ. But it's like, if you're in the top 15, you are in the race.
Yeah.
Like you have the pace to like take two and try to win the race, right?
Yeah.
So it's done its job that way. It's also done it where it's just we're all on top of each other.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's what I was going to say. There's 36 spots, so somebody has to finish 1 through 36.
Yeah, and there's really
if the competition is that close, that's what you want.
Yeah. I mean, there's no bad cars anymore, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like everybody's trying to do their best.
Everybody's got a chance.
Yeah. So it's tough because it's the same car and it's the same pieces and it's the same whatever. Like you're really just fighting for millimeters, and setups and stuff like that because it makes a difference. But hold on.
Yeah, really how you control the variables at this point, right? The driver, strategy, pit crew, those kinds of things.
Right. You got to, I mean, same thing in Xfinity. You have to execute your day, right?
Yeah.
You have to execute your day. But that's and it's way more important to execute when you're on top of each other. There's not a lot of people that, like you saw the 24 car starting at the back, and I don't know that he ever did make it all the way up to the, the front. And there's some races where he's been in the back and he can drive to the front, right? So it's like you just see how tough it is to, even over 400 miles, to just get there.
Yeah.
But look, we are happy exactly where we're at and how we, kind of like on our journey. It's just like it feels like we're in the race, like it feels like if we can just execute, we can make noise.
What about all the conversation with the competition? I'm hearing a lot this year out of different drivers between the mile and a halves. I mean, the racing has been so good on the mile and a halves versus the road courses versus the short tracks, etc. Do you see that kind of evening out? What can we expect to make that kind of even out, or are we just going to have what we got?
In some ways, for you and me, it shows that we have now lived long enough that the mile and a halves that were panned and being
painful, right? They were painful.
Or now we're just like, how many more can we get on the schedule?
I thought about that this week when I was listening to Dale.
Yeah. So I mean, like it goes in cycles, but look, I don't think there's anybody team side or NASCAR side that doesn't know we got to fix the short tracks, right? That's really because you look at Kansas, and it incredible. Was the best race, like start to finish. I know incredible. This is hyperbole. It's probably like the most complete, awesome race I think I've ever seen.
For us to have the amount of close finishes that we've had this year, it's just been incredible.
Just but like that first stage with the 5 and the 1 next to each other, it felt like 80 laps, you know? Like, this is crazy. And that's where it's kind of like hard because it's like we all should be super appreciating that because it's, we get some elements of that almost every meal and a half, weekly for sure.
Yeah.
We're just so good at like just squeezing it too tight. You know what I mean? As an industry and the fan base, it's like, man, we really eat our own, you know?
Yeah,
so.
Right. That's a good way to put it. All right, what about TV? What are you looking forward to with the new partners and the streaming coming involved in 25 and beyond?
Yeah, like I'm not afraid of the streaming. You know, that's where we're going. You know, like, I mean, I stream at home. I figure that, you know, all of us, I'm not like Gen X or Gen whatever the cool one is now.
Yeah. Gen ZZ. I don't know.
So it's just like, I know how to stream, so I'm assuming that everybody else knows how to stream. I'm not saying I'm technologically savvy, but, you know, I have an Amazon account. You know, I got my Prime. You know, so it's like, if I can order kitchen utensils, I can probably figure out, you know, now I can do NASCAR.
How to get to the race.
Yeah, I can do NASCAR. So it's just how it is, right? Like, you just see, like, what the NBA did.
It's evolving.
Yeah. The NBA, you know, essentially did the same as what NASCAR did. It's like they needed a number, or they were hoping for a number. Mm-hmm. They just did it 3 or 4 different ways, and spread it all out. Yeah. That's what we did, and that's how it is. That's how it's going to be. And that's where it's like, I don't know. There's just no use being like, you know, like, you don't read newspapers anymore, right? You know what I mean? You go online, right? It's the same deal. It's just like, we have to stop, like, being like, well, this is what it was. And
there's no, in today's times, there's no one perfect scenario. You know, cable's not a perfect scenario. Satellite is not a perfect. Streaming is not a perfect scenario. All the different ways that you can consume television. Because that's the one thing I, you know, was reading just some comments. Oh, well, you know, screw that. I don't have Amazon. And then I, you know, was reading there's 180 million Amazon subscribers.
Right.
So, okay, I'm sorry if that person can't get Amazon. Hopefully in the 180, there's somebody new that gets turned on to our sport, right? Because that's what has to happen. I talk about this. We were just talking about this morning with LW, you know, my husband. And we were talking about, we always, you know, raising kids, and we get enamored and crazy about how much screen time is he having, and these devices, and this is, you know, ruining our lives right now, and why do kids have to mess with this? And I'm like, your parents, their parents, they all had these types of conversations. Now we're having them a lot quicker these days because the world's turning like in every 10 years instead of every 50 or so. But that's how I think about our sport. I mean, we have to grow, we have to change, we have to adapt. We can't stay stagnant. And it will grow and change, and you're going to have some that are, you know, not happy about it. And then hopefully we find some new fans, just like we did with Netflix. I mean, the numbers that that NASCAR pointed out of the age range was staggering that were turned on to our sport. Yeah. And that's what we need.
Yeah, and you touched on it, you know, we were just talking about, like, hey, they're on their phones and they're doing this. Whether we like it or not, that's how it's consumed now.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, that's just how it is. And
it's like they come out of the womb now knowing how to work a cell phone.
That's right. Well, that's my fault too. I mean, I gave our kids, you know, they were probably
their first iPad.
Yeah, they know exactly what to do. But that's kind of like, we have to be able to not be like, that's stupid. Yeah. Like, we have to start leaning into that more, you know, because that's almost as important, like, who's consuming it and how much, as a TV number, right?
And finding the benefit, you know, and controlling the benefit, right? Yep. Yeah, for sure.
NASCAR fans, FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, is here, and right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you bet your first $5. Just go to FanDuel.com/Dale to sign up. Then you can bet on everything from individual race winners to prop bets to which driver's going to take home the championship, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Start your engines with $200 in bonus bets, win or lose, when you place your first $5 bet. This week, NASCAR is headed to North Wilkesboro for the All-Star race. There are going to be a lot of variables that these drivers and teams have to manage over the weekend, from a freshly paved racetrack to multiple tire compounds. It's going to be a fun one to watch. Visit FanDuel.com/Dale to get started. FanDuel, authorized gaming operator of NASCAR. 21 plus and present in North Carolina. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 877-718-5543 or visit morethanagame.nc.gov.
So I'm going to kind of finish up here been a great conversation. Lots of good insight for our listeners. I might know what your answer is, but maybe I don't know. So I want to ask about the best advice received. Some intriguing advice that stuck with you, some advice throughout, your NASCAR journey. And even if it's not with your NASCAR journey, what's some good advice that you've received?
Well, there's probably been a couple, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the two names that are popping in my head is from Kerry Agajanian. Mr. Hendrick has given me tons. Ken House. Remember Ken House?
Oh yeah.
Ken House gave me tons. I probably still have the demerit record at Hendrick. When I was younger, this is probably 04, 03, 04. I was still living in Indianapolis, and Kerry gave me a I was just like, it's like he validated me, right? He was like, because I was doing all the USAC stuff there and bringing the kids down, and all the Dodge Motorsports people were in town, like like John Fernandez and there's, I think one of the girls' name was Denise. You know what I mean? Like it's like there's just like Kevin Miller, like they were all in town, and we were going to like St. Elmo's or someplace for dinner, right? And I have Kerry, got the executive branch. I'm saying this because I say this to these kids that work for us now a lot. So I go to this dinner. I'm surrounded by all these people, and I must have talked the whole damn dinner, right? Like I talked like no, some of them they were asking questions, but it was just like, I don't know what I was just talking, right? And so I'm walking Kerry back to his hotel, and Kerry, I worked for him for I can't tell you how many years. He probably only told me what to do twice, right? Because he was always like really good about just empowering you and letting you find your way. He put his hand on me, and he goes, "How do you think that went?" And I was like, "Oh my God, that was awesome. I mean, we had, you know what I mean, like whatever." And he goes, "Yeah, isn't that cool? We had all the Dodge Motorsports people. Maybe we should have listened to them, right? Like you don't have to talk. You know what I mean? And like that always just sticks with me. Is like you go to these big sponsor deals and you go to like all these sponsor dinners, and you just talk over them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And so I've always just like that's one of the things. It's like you don't have to talk.
Yeah,
you can just shut up.
Yeah,
like, and so that's that was a really good advice from him. And then I remember with Ken House when I was spotting for Kyle, right? And there's probably a million, he's got these great, sayings like, one is just like, let's not build a snake we have to kill later. You know what I mean? Kind of a thing.
Let's don't build a snake we have to kill later.
Right. And, but I was spotting for Kyle, right? And it was the same, and it's not like 2024 Kyle. I mean, I had like 2006 Kyle, and it was crazy. And, our radio was just crazy. And, you get into these things where, you kind of see, like, spotters are just dumb, right? In general, we're just dumb. And
somebody's going to get mad at you for that.
Well, I'm just saying, like, we're like, oh, hold on. I was about to say we think we're the show, but you gave him a show. But it's like, I remember just being, like, we were at Vegas or someplace, and he was coming apart. And, like, I was egging him on. You know what I mean? I was like, man, you're the man, Kyle.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. This is stupid. Like, what the And on Sunday morning, I would get to the racetrack 6 hours before the race, right? Because you had to beat traffic. And, you get a call from Ken, come on in. So I walked in, and he was just like, do you know who you are? Do you know who you're spotting for? I'm like, yes, sir. He's just like, it can be a little hot, And he's just like, perhaps we don't put fire on that flame. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was kind of that thing where it's just like you don't have to exacerbate a situation. Yeah. You don't have to dump fuel on something that is coming apart. And I just remember those things now. I try to be chill anyway, but like I consciously do that now because of that conversation. Because you're always they
make sense later as you're going through.
That's right. So like if it doesn't matter if it's your partner, it doesn't matter if it's your kids. You don't have to egg them on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just help chill it out. Don't egg them on.
That's one of the things I love about Joe Mattis here is that, when you go into conversations, no matter what sponsors or whatever it is, or coworkers or whatever, it's like we're going to listen. So we don't have there's no way you can figure out what your response needs to be before you even have the conversation, right? So listen, that's the first thing. Like, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to agree on anything today. You don't have to like it. You don't have to do any of those things. Just listen, right? And you don't have to make any agreements or whatnot. So I love that advice. Now, for a lot of people, you've mentioned Kerry Agajanian a lot. Tell everybody who Kerry Agajanian is, because he's been in the sport a really long time.
Yeah, I mean, like, so everybody knows Parnelli Jones, right? And, Parnelli, when he was winning, IndyCar races and the Indy 500, he was driving for Kerry's dad, right? So Kerry, grew up around all of that. And Kerry went on to become a lawyer. And then in like, I want to say, I might have the years wrong, but, somewhere in the 95, 96, he started like working with John Andretti, right? And doing his deals. And actually, even before that, he was involved with the Jeff Gordon stuff, back in those days. So he's just like, man, all these things are going. Maybe we should start a company. Then there was a guy who was unbelievable in a midget and sprint car and was hopping into an Indy car, and it totally changed his business, Tony Stewart, right? And so
that's who I know the name with. Is Tony. Yeah.
And so, he built this great firm with so many branches. And it's funny, it's like, even when we all run into each other, it kind of sucks that we couldn't do it all under one roof.
Yeah.
Because it was unbelievable. Because you had Rod, who's now over at Fuel.
Yeah.
You had Chris Bybee, who's got his own stuff. We have our own, what we're doing. It's just crazy. Like,
all branched out.
Yeah.
But learned from one of the best.
Yeah. And he was, and I'm not saying we followed everything, because he was also a guy where it's just like, you don't have to fight. You know what I mean? Like, you can get to the same exact place, without the emotion, or without, just try to, keep it simple, right? And it's funny because, when you're asking like best advice you ever received, it's like our sponsor, Gamebridge, Dan Towers. He has a thing where he's just like, emotion doesn't equate to winning, it's kind of like that same line, that's where him and Kerry are like super similar. But like, Kerry's a legend, and it's like everybody, everybody should know who he is if they don't.
Exactly.
But he's a his name
is
legend.
in a lot of circles, and he's done a lot of big things. So awesome. Well, this was fun. I appreciate the insight, and talking charters and talking the future of Spire and just kind of race team stuff in general. And certainly appreciate you coming in today. And again, a big thanks to Ally for bringing this guest segment to us with Jeff Dickerson of Spire Motorsports.